This is A New Nigeria with Wale Oluwade. This is your current affairs program where we critically examine the strategic issues bedeviling Nigeria's developmental aspirations and boldly offer practical suggestions on building the Nigeria of our collective desires. Today's episode promises to be engaging and exciting, so get ready as we begin in earnest. And now, let's get on with it. Today, we're looking at the topic, Rethinking Democracy in Nigeria, a major revelation that discerning Nigerians have taken away from the just concluded 2023 general elections is that neither robust laws nor innovative technology are in themselves panaceas to grand electoral malfeasance and corruption. The atrocities that marred the 2023 elections have demonstrated beyond question that what is needed to ensure our electoral processes are transparent, free, fair, and credible are strong and independent public institutions and a sufficient number of patriotic Nigerians manning these public institutions. Therefore, the ensuing conversation now must be geared towards answering the following fundamental questions. How do we make participants in the democratic process democrats in the truest sense of the word? Secondly, how do we ensure the rule of law indeed is the bedrock of our democracy? Also, how do we infuse democratic values and tenets in the entire gamut of our political parties' activities and processes? And also, what practical steps are necessary to deepen democratic culture in Nigeria? These are some of the issues we're examining today. We'll take this short break, and when I return, we'll get right into our conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. My guest is already here, Professor Ali Yusuf Zoaka. Good afternoon, Prof.
Good afternoon.
How are you? Good to see you today.
It's nice seeing you too.
Same here. Professor Zoaka is the former head of the Department of Political Science, University of Abuja, and he's there to help us give context to our discussion. Prof, we just concluded the 2023 general elections.
Yes.
What's your general assessment of the entire process, both the February 25th presidential and National Assembly elections, and then the March 18th governorship and state houses of assembly elections? What's your general assessment?
You see, for me, the elections actually presented, a situation where we had expected that it would be a seamless exercise, devoid of any form of violence, that Nigerians will be able to express and give their consent to those to govern them. But unfortunately for me, I think, because even if you injure one person, for me that should not even be tolerated within a democratic system, because violence is completely supposed to be out of place in a democracy. Government is supposed to be based on the consent freely given by the people, not any form of attacks I have witnessed in several parts of the country, which is really uncalled for, and therefore was a huge disappointment for me, because I felt, having seen all the improvements we've had in the past, and of course with the technology that was introduced, the beavers and the IRF, that we now felt, yes, immediately elections are over, we'll get the results. And so therefore we had high hopes, but frankly speaking, for me, that hope was completely dashed after the elections, both for the presidential and the governorship elections. It was really a very unfortunate scenario. Okay,
Prof, if I hear you, and Nigerians are listening, what you're saying is that you're not particularly impressed with the conduct of both cycle of elections. But what would you say to some of our compatriots, Nigerians, who say this is the best elections in the history of Nigeria? Have you heard that?
I've heard it expressed by several people.
They say that on the premise that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president-elect now, who was a candidate of the All Progressives Congress, lost Lagos, his stronghold. That's one. Sitting governors, some lost their re-election, Zamfara, Matawale. Sitting governors who had completed 2 terms, who wanted to go to the Senate, Okezekwe Azu in Abia, Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi in Enugu, Samuel Otom in Benue, who wanted to go to the Senate. They lost. So if you take some of these are some of the reasons to justify their claim or assertion that this is the best elections and all of that. That it was keenly contested. The margin wasn't that much between the the three major political parties. In Kano, a new party won Kano from the ruling All Progressives Congress. What do you say to this, Prof?
You see, for people who are saying that, I think maybe they tolerate violence and they love violence. And for me, I say, if you love violence, then why are you against the military? Because the military uses violence to acquire power. And so we shouldn't have a situation whereby violence is being deployed, for election. Why do you now have a situation whereby in all the states, everybody is complaining, both the winners and the losers, and yet people are saying it's the best. I've never seen a controversial, situation like what we are facing now, as a result of the outcome, of the elections, both the presidential and of course the governorship elections in several states. Complaints of, you saw the drama happening, for instance, in River State, where people have gone, they want to obtain, some evidence from INEC. They are prevented from doing that. And you say it's a democracy, it's the best democracy. And we've seen, contestants, those who lost, complaining that, one was saying right from the polling units up to the collation center, up to the time the result was announced, everywhere mutilation, cancellation, and these results were rewritten and uploaded, of course. You go to the IRF, you see a lot of, people are looking at maybe the magnitude. Maybe look at the number of people that are attacked, number of people killed and so on. Then they say, no, in a democracy, nobody should be killed. How do you you are just going to vote. People are not looking at those people that are engaging themselves in, because it's supposed to be treason, actually, those snatching ballot box, changing, any person that will sit down, the state engaged you to carry out a duty. And it's expected of you that you be honest in the discharge of that responsibility. You now go and change the result, or you go and jump figures, or you do all sorts of illegalities. That should not be tolerated in a democracy. It's supposed to be, because sometimes they will tell you, okay, even in advanced countries, they have this challenge. But the issue is this, because there's a world index that is, used, to measure, the countries that are considered to be democratic and the level of their compliance, to rules and regulations, and whether you can say that there's transparency, fairness, and all that in elections. And when you look at it, in all of the African continent, only Mauritius is listed as a full democracy. All the remaining have all sorts of challenges, so they look at them as autocratic or semi-autocratic, or actually a mixture of, both, the democracy and, of course, autocratic, systems. So these are not free systems. So I thought we should be aspiring to be a full democracy, where nobody should be afraid to go and vote. But you saw voter suppression. People are being threatened using all sorts of things, and then somebody will come and tell you this is the best. No, nobody should be threatened because of an election. You are just to go and express your own choice.
Prof, yes. I mean, I hear you very well. Let me ask again for clarity. So you said world ranking, world index on democratic governments in Africa. Only Mauritius is ranked as the only democracy as a full democracy, yes, in the real sense of the word.
Democracy, yes.
Wow. Okay, you are a political scientist, Prof, and you're a professor of political science. Can you tell us briefly, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, what makes a democratic society?
You see,
because part of the challenges, Prof, part of the challenges we have as Nigerians, we've been, of course, the millennials don't even understand, much, but we that grew up under the military rule, I think we've not come out of the military, mindsets and their ways of doing things, their culture. So Nigerians don't really understand, because even amongst friends, informed, educated friends, they think this is normal. So please, can you tell us what makes a democratic society?
You see, first is for us to understand, because you see why military is being rejected is because of the belief in what they refer to as civilian supremacy. That civilians are supreme, they are the ones that should govern. Because things should be done in a civilized manner, in a civil way. And therefore, no amount of violence, no matter how little, intimidation should be brought into a democracy, because it's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for them. And so why should you now bring violence? If it's a government, it should be based on their own choice. And so in a democracy, you find some of the features will be that election that is supposed to be conducted so that you can now choose your leaders freely, without any form of intimidation, there should be the rule of law. Everybody is supposed to be considered to be equal before the law. There's no one that will be above the law. That police will be there observing elections. Because when you look at the Electoral Act also, there are problems with that. Because what the Electoral Act has given the police is that they can only be instructed by the presiding officer to remove an unruly person within the precinct of the where they are voting. But outside that, they can do nothing. And that's why you've seen on social media places where somebody was paying people money and police were beside him observing.
How critical is our state's institutions in safeguarding democratic practice? How critical are they?
You see, if the institutions are independent, for instance, the police, they're supposed to provide security. They are not expected to wait for instructions from anybody for them
because
to do
you see someone committing a crime.
You are supposed to act, but where you have such limitations like I just earlier mentioned, then it becomes a problem because they'll be acting outside their own mandates. So there's a problem. So the institutions are supposed to be seen to be doing the job that they've been
Let me ask you pointedly, Prof.
Yes.
Let me put you on the spot. How independent is the Independent National Electoral Commission?
If it is independent, you don't need to put the name independent to say that it's independent. Independent simply means that they are free from control, from
manipulation, from
and
influence.
all that, from influence. So therefore, they should be able to, conduct this exercise, knowing that they have the power, and they have to also know the magnitude, of the responsibility that has been placed, on their shoulders, because any mistake they make can cause, the complete breakdown of law and order in the country. And so therefore, they are expected to be above board. You shouldn't be hearing of monies, be that they compromise and all that. And so therefore, because when you hear what they were saying, particularly with the high hopes they raised of Nigerians that you get results in real time, that means as election is ongoing, results will be coming out. Because people will be posting these results and you'll be seeing it. Even as a citizen, anywhere you are, if you have access to data and you can access the net, you will get those information. But on the day of election, that didn't happen. So, and that completely, discouraged a lot of people, and they are disappointed, with what eventually came out as the outcome. And, INEC also had the powers to review results. Because, for instance, if there are areas where there are conflicts or, all this violence has been deployed by thugs and so on, since these are citizens of a country and they have the right to exercise their franchise, which is to vote, to choose a government of their own choice, why can't you, and there are places where they didn't even vote at all, why won't you now postpone elections in those places? Because part of, when you just say you cancel the results, that is now motivating those who believe that all you need to do is to win by all means, to go and disrupt areas that they think they may not be strong, so that the result will be cancelled. And therefore, they can win with such very low,
margins.
Votes, very low votes. How many people voted? Out of 80-something million, you now have 25 million. How many percent of that? So it's a very...
Prof,
yes.
Let's take this short break and then we'll come back shortly. We'll take this short break and when we return, we'll continue with our conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Prof, before we went on that short break, you touched on something that I was going to ask you about. Democracy, in my own understanding, of course, has many meanings. It is representative government, meaning the majority of the people of a particular space or society or nation choose a certain government to represent them for a period of time. Now, there are 94 million people registered on INEC register as voters. 87 million collected their PVCs. But in this last election cycle, especially for the presidential elections, only about 25% roughly participated. And then the president-elect was declared winner with about 8.8 roughly. Now, if you put that on the total population, 219 or so, that's about 4%. Is that representative democracy? Now, if you choose to say, okay, out of the 87 million that took their PVC is about 10%. Can 10% of 87 million people with PVCs, can that be representative democracy? In 1 minute, because I have other questions before we wrap up.
Well, certainly, you see, you don't force people to go out. There should be, people should be interested in their country.
Yes.
So if they will not go and vote, and only a few people will come out, of course, what that will come out will be if you have most of the votes are, casted in your own favor, then of course you become the winner. No matter how low the number of votes tally at the end of the day, what is the population of people that voted? So, and that's just it, because you cannot force people to come out. I know in some countries they may, impose certain sanctions or give some incentives, for voting. And so people now are motivated to, go and vote for their country. But I think generally, I don't know, in Nigeria, the turnout is very low.
Very, very low. Now, let me ask you, Prof, as we wind down on this part of the interview, what makes a Democrat? Do you see Nigerians, individuals, as, do we have democratic culture? Do we have democratic behavior?
I don't think we have a democratic culture and behavior, because you see, if you are a Democrat, what the ingredients of democracy will be debate, persuasion, reaching consensus, on issues, lobbying, negotiations. So there's, in all this, you don't see where they say go and recruit talks. It is based on understanding and reaching agreements peacefully, without any form of compulsion.
The contestation of ideas,
yeah,
about how the society can become better.
And then, of course, the best idea will take the day.
Take the day.
So generally you find in a democracy, the culture that we should build is a culture that there should be tolerance. Tolerance of ideas that may not agree with your own. Yeah. And so, and the liberties, the freedom of people must be guaranteed. And you don't gag people. When people express their minds, you don't go ahead and start slamming them with all sorts of fines. They are just expressing themselves, and some may be angry.
Yes.
And therefore, that is why you have to also, when you get them, for instance, in the parliament, you have to teach them anger management. Because they are going to go into parliament and they will see people coming from different places.
In 1 or 2 minutes, Prof, what give us 2 or 3 recommendations. How do we, going forward? Because like you said earlier on, Nigerians, the majority of Nigerians are totally disenchanted with the outcomes, especially of the presidential elections. And there is a growing antipathy towards democracy. People gather and they're saying, oh, this and so. How do we salvage this democracy? 1 or 2 or 3 recommendations.
Well, you see, as it is now, we're actually getting into the last process of the entire exercise, going through the courts, because that is also part of, because we talk about the courts. If you are disenchanted, go to the court.
Instead of taking the law into your own hands.
You don't take laws into your hands. You go to the court. And then hoping that the judiciary will also dispense justice. And once you dispense justice, people will see, they are just and fair, and then they will be satisfied. But if you don't do that, then you grow, they will be completely disenchanted about the entire thing. And then the next election may not show up. Or it may be more violent than what some people are, they cherish violence and they think that is democracy. That is not democracy. Doesn't have any room for any violence. It's not that, like a Nigerian politician believes that win at all costs. Don't lose. Just make sure you win. Let the other person take you to court. Then when you get to the court, then you manipulate the court to favor you. That is not democracy. That is not fairness. That is not justice.
1 or 2 or 3 recommendations, Prof, so that...
Well, for me, I think what we need to do, we always talk about attitudinal change.
Exactly.
Attitude.
Exactly.
The attitude of the people.
Cultural behavior.
Cultural behavior. Because you see, we cannot, it is the reflection of the society itself that you find. It's not angels that are coming to do the election.
Exactly.
We are the ones to do it. And so if we have the right, we have integrity, we are honest, we show all those characters that present good behavior, then you cannot easily manipulate anybody. Exactly. And you don't need to, all this printing of ballot papers, all those things, you may discover that you may not even need to do that. You have a more simpler, straightforward system, just like you go to the Beavers to accredit. Why can't they immediately accredit, you vote right there and then it is collated, and nobody should come and tell you stories about the machines broke down. And also, because if we are honest as individuals, then it will go a long way in trying to promote the democracy that we want. But if we are coming believing that we can bring this Machiavellian tactics, Machiavelli wrote when? About the state of Florence, the city of Florence. When? In the 14th, 15th century. Then you now want to bring that kind of idea in the modern age, in this current digital age. No, it's not going to work. And that's why a lot of the this new generation, you know, they are completely disappointed. You know, for them, they are disappointed, and they think because they voted in their own polling unit and somebody they love has won, that is the result as far as they are concerned all over the country. It's not always like that. They may be right, they may be wrong, but I think the democracy also requires a lot of patience.
Absolutely.
It requires a lot of patience. People must be patient, you know, because it's a system that grows, you know, slowly but surely.
It's evolutionary.
Yes, evolutionary. So it's something that will take time, but eventually the culture will be entrenched. Yeah, it will be deepened, and people will begin to do the right thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof.
So thank you.
This is a continuing conversation. I'm sure we'll have other times to look at this in fuller details.
Oh,
thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that's the end of the interview segment. We'll take this short break, and when I come back, I'll give my closing statements. Please stay with us. Welcome back. What makes democracy work, and why is it the best, or the description I personally prefer, the most open and accountable form of government? Now, democracy at best is an ideal. It is an ideal premised on certain timeless principles, such as, number one, the rule of law; two, separation of powers among the three co-equal arms of government; three, checks and balances; four, a strong, virile, and independent media; fifth, a firm, untainted, totally impartial, and independent judiciary; six, an enlightened populace; seven, a truly democratic and ideologically distinct political parties; nine, an enlightened citizenry, also an impartial and independent electoral management body; and 10, an independent and neutral security apparatus subordinate to and committed to the preservation of democracy. Furthermore, these principles of democratic government relies on two basic powers: one, accountability, and sanction. Inherent in each of the mentioned principles are powers to hold elected officials accountable and to sanction this where it is deemed necessary. Also, intrinsic to the power of accountability is the right of the people to effect peaceful change of government due to dissatisfaction or substantial non-performance. In a genuine democracy, the power of appointing or removing governments belongs to the people or voters. That power does not belong to a clique or a special group of individuals to manipulate or rig themselves into power. In the absence of any of the foregoing principles, any system of government cannot claim to be a democracy. Currently, Nigeria pretends to be a democracy. From the above principles are earlier listed. Examine and determine yourself. Which of these do we revere and observe fastidiously in our government system? For instance, which ruling party in Nigeria has sanctioned its president for wrongdoing or even failure to deliver on its manifesto since 1999? Yet, the African National Congress in South Africa has removed two presidents, Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma, for different reasons. Can you imagine that happening here? In the United Kingdom, the Conservative Party recently removed two prime ministers in quick succession, Mr. Boris Johnson and Ms. Liz Truss. As I speak here, former President of the United States, Donald Trump, was a few days ago arraigned in a court of law, facing criminal charges preferred against him by a Manhattan district attorney in the state of New York for all the numerous atrocities perpetrated by our rulers since 1960. Which of them has ever been held to account or sanctioned for this by the institutions of states? How do we change this situation going forward? Number one, we need to first rebuild our public institutions to be truly independent and free from political compromise. This can be by altering the appointment processes of persons to all of our critical agencies, such as the National Assembly, the Judiciary, the Police Force, the Independent National Electoral Commission, and so on. Two, we also need to begin to recruit persons with proven patriotism and passion to serve into these institutions. Currently, public offices aren't designed to serve, but to sustain the feeding frenzy of the ruling class on our common patrimony. There is thus a necessity for legislation and policy guidelines on responsible governance anchored on fiscal discipline and a commitment to service rather than reward. where resources are wasted in the sustenance of politicians and civil servants than providing quality service to the people. Without a strong and independent public institutions manned by patriots, we're only wasting time and scarce resources. And as we can see from the past 24 years, while Nigeria has become poorer, the ruling elites have become stupendously wealthy at our collective expense. The conversation towards the deepening of democratic culture shall continue in subsequent episodes of this program. Remember, change requires action, and positive change requires positive action. I believe in a new Nigeria, and it is possible. And those are my closing thoughts. Now, that's the program today. Remember to follow me on different social media handles. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can watch this particular video and others there at your convenience. Drop your comments also. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.